Did the Trojan War actually happen, or is it just a grand myth spun by Homer's imagination? Recent discoveries in modern-day Turkey might provide the answers we've been seeking for centuries. In this documentary, we set out to explore the possibility that the legendary Trojan War was more than mere poetry. By placing Homer's epic verses side by side with archaeological finds in Turkey, particularly at the site known as Hisarlik, we'll see just how closely myth can mirror reality. From the writings of ancient historians to cutting-edge excavations, our mission is to sift through the evidence and shed new light on one of the most debated stories of all time. Our journey begins with the figure at the heart of the Trojan War's fame, the legendary poet Homer. The Iliad, traditionally attributed to Homer, is one of the oldest extant works of Western literature, composed, or at least written down, sometime in the 8th century BCE. But what exactly does it say about Troy? In its pages we meet Paris, a prince of Troy who abducts or elopes with Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world and wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. This act sparks a massive conflict when the Greeks unite under Menelaus's brother, Agamemnon, to retrieve Helen and punish Troy. Central to the narrative is Achilles, the Greeks' greatest warrior, whose anger at Agamemnon and eventual return to battle form the emotional core of the poem. His quest for glory and his confrontation with the Trojan hero Hector capture the human elements of pride, honor, and mortality. Although the Iliad ends before the fall of Troy, later Greek sources, including portions of the Odyssey and other epic cycle poems, describe how the Greeks finally entered the city using a giant wooden horse, a cunning ploy that has become an enduring symbol of deceptive warfare. Scholars have long debated whether Homer was a single individual or the collective name for multiple poet-singers whose oral compositions eventually crystallized into the text we know today. This is often referred to as the Homeric question. Some propose that Homer was a master poet who inherited centuries of oral tradition, refining it into the Iliad and the Odyssey. Others maintain that the name Homer stands in for a tradition rather than a single personality. Regardless, these epics have shaped our cultural imagination for millennia, bridging the divide between myth and history. The Iliad is more than an epic poem. It is a foundational text in Western literary tradition. From ancient Greece to modern times, this sweeping tale of war, honor, and the human condition continues to capture hearts and minds. Literary giants such as Virgil, Dante, and Shakespeare drew inspiration from Homer's style and themes, while the Iliad's archetypes, heroism, fate versus free will, and tragic downfall, echo in stories across centuries and continents. In the ancient world, Greeks saw Homer's epics as a touchstone for their shared cultural and moral values. Cities throughout Greece claimed Homeric connections or lineages, tracing back to Trojan War heroes, affirming both civic pride and a sense of unity. Even now, the universal themes of courage, loyalty, love, and betrayal lead us to wonder whether there is a kernel of reality behind the legend. If the Trojan War did happen, its discovery would validate the poem's historical underpinnings and our ongoing fascination with epic storytelling. Even in Homer's own time, the question of Troy's existence was perhaps an echo on the wind. Were the walls of Ilios genuine stone, or mere figments of poetic invention? Ancient writers like Herodotus, Thucydides, and later geographers tried to pinpoint Troy's location, if it existed at all. Through medieval and Renaissance periods, scholars oscillated between viewing Troy as a mythic emblem of human folly and a genuine seat of Bronze Age power. On a metaphorical level, Troy represents the futility and destructiveness of war, a cautionary tale about pride and the human cost of vengeance. The Trojan War's enduring drama, built upon personal slight national pride and the folly of gods, continues to resonate across cultures. As we move forward, we will explore how archaeology converges with or contradicts Homer's verses. The central question remains, can the Troy of literature ever be fully reconciled with the evidence under Turkey's soil? For centuries, Troy existed in the realm of legends and dusty tomes, until a German adventurer turned archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann stepped onto the scene in the late 19th century. Armed with Homer's Iliad and a romantic belief that legend might lead to truth, Schliemann set out to discover the city he had read about in epic verse. Born in 1822, he was a self-made businessman who made his fortune in global trade. Turning his passion for Homer into a lifelong obsession, he believed the ancient poet was describing a real place and that he, Schliemann, would uncover it. In the 1870s, Schliemann began large-scale excavations in a region of northwestern Turkey called Hisarlik, which had been identified as a possible site for Troy. His bulldozing approach was as unorthodox as it was determined. He dug massive trenches, sometimes destroying upper layers to reach what he believed was Homeric Troy beneath. Guided by a near-fanatical trust in Homeric texts, he declared the Iliad more accurate than any modern historian's account of antiquity. Driven by the lure of following the poet's footsteps, his work combined scholarship, enthusiasm, and an undeniable flair for the dramatic, often to the chagrin of the more methodical academic community. In 1873, Schliemann announced a sensational find, a cache of gold, silver, and other precious objects he dubbed Priam's treasure, claiming it once belonged to the Trojan king from Homer's tale. Controversy erupted immediately. Many scholars believed he had mislabeled the treasure's time period, while others accused him of removing artifacts illegally. Subsequent research suggested these items likely came from an earlier layer of the site, now known as Troy II, which predated the supposed time frame of the Trojan War by centuries. At Hisarlik, archaeologists uncovered more than just one city. Instead, they found multiple cities built atop each other, each reflecting a distinct period in ancient history. These excavations revealed at least 9 major phases, Troy I through Troy IX, spanning from the early Bronze Age to the Roman period. Each layer had its own fortifications, habitation patterns, and material culture, sometimes separated by centuries or even millennia. Early scholarship linked Troy II to Homer's city, partly due to Schliemann's discovery, but later studies shifted the focus to Troy VI or VII, which date closer to the late Bronze Age and the period commonly proposed for the legendary conflict. The discovery of impressive walls and evidence of destruction in Troy VI or VII fueled debates about whether these layers corresponded to the city besieged by the Greeks. These multiple layers, each telling a different tale, prompted archaeologists to argue over which era best matched Homer's descriptions. Historians examined pottery styles, architectural remains, and signs of destruction by fire or earthquake to align one particular layer with the Iliad's epic narrative. The fervor and controversy sparked by Schliemann's work did not end with his excavations. Instead, it set the stage for scholarly skepticism and ongoing debate. Was he a pioneering hero, resurrecting Homeric legend, or a sensationalist prone to misinterpretation? Critics accused him of destroying valuable upper layers while chasing the notion of a golden Troy further down in the mound. Others argued that his declaration of Priam's treasure was driven by personal ambition, a chance to claim he had literally struck gold that proved Homer right. Yet his methods, though rough and often destructive by modern standards, undeniably brought international attention to the site. The artifacts he unearthed, despite belonging to an earlier stratum, showed that Hisarlik was once the seat of a wealthy, fortified city, leaving open the tantalizing possibility that another layer could indeed reveal Homer's Troy. Schliemann's legacy is twofold. His passion for Homer sparked renewed interest in Bronze Age Anatolia, yet his impetuous style introduced errors that still bedevil scholars today. The 19th century search for Troy was fraught with conflict, echoing in many ways the epic struggle Homer described. But the story does not end here. Modern science and archaeology would soon bring fresh perspectives to this ancient riddle. In the wake of Heinrich Schliemann's pioneering but controversial digs, a new generation of archaeologists flocked to Hisarlik, not just with shovels and trowels, but with the latest scientific tools and a determination to conduct meticulous excavation. Researchers from universities in Turkey, Germany, the United States, and elsewhere now cooperate in ongoing efforts to piece together this ancient city's past. Institutions like the University of Tübingen and Çanakkale Onsekiz Mart University lead the way, coordinating excavations, sharing findings, and applying interdisciplinary methods to interpret the site. Recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1998, Troy's preservation is a global priority, and new technologies minimize invasive digging so future generations can continue the search. Among the most significant advancements are ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging, which reveal buried structures without disturbing the soil. Variations in the Earth's magnetic field can point to forgotten walls, roads, and foundations. Radiocarbon dating of organic remains, like seeds or bones, helps establish a precise timeline for Troy's layers, and in some cases, dendrochronology is used when preserved wood is available. High-resolution scans of artifacts and architectural remnants enable 3D reconstructions and virtual models, offering glimpses of how the city might have looked at different stages in its history. While these modern tools widen our view, the core question persists: is there tangible proof of a catastrophic war at Troy during the 13th or 12th century BCE, as Homer's drama suggests? Excavations have revealed formidable defensive walls, some featuring watchtowers and carefully engineered gateways, leading some to link them with the Iliad's strong-walled Ilios. A number of these walls show signs of damage and subsequent repairs, hinting at repeated assaults or natural disasters. Weapons such as bronze arrowheads, spear points, and sling bullets appear in layers dated roughly to the late Bronze Age, sometimes in direct association with human remains. Traces of fire and scattered debris in these strata seem to indicate a destructive event, although it could be explained by the many regional skirmishes and invasions that were common during this time. Some historians see this as evidence of the Trojan War, while others insist there is no definitive proof connecting these ruins to the Mycenaeans. Beyond questions of war, archaeological findings shed light on daily life in Troy. Excavations have revealed a sophisticated city plan featuring paved streets, drainage systems, and multi-tiered housing. Surviving storage rooms filled with pottery indicate a thriving commercial hub where goods like wine, grain, and olive oil were stored and likely traded with communities across the Aegean and Anatolia. The variety of pottery styles, reflecting Mycenaean and Hittite influences, suggests that Troy held a strategic position along major trade routes linking Europe and Asia. The discovery of both elite tombs and humble graves points to a stratified society, lending credibility to the idea of a prosperous and influential city-state. If Troy 6 or 7 corresponds to the Iliad's timeline, these everyday objects, cooking pots, loom weights, jewelry, offer an unembellished glimpse into Homer's world. Even if the epic's heroes and gods are partly myth, the archaeology reveals a community where proud inhabitants once walked. Such modern discoveries, from fortified walls and possible war debris to evidence of a bustling city, spark fierce debate. Some argue that the convergence of clues, strong fortifications, catastrophic destruction layers, and Troy's strategic location points to a conflict resembling Homer's account. Others believe the Trojan War is a blend of many smaller conflicts folded into one legendary story through centuries of oral tradition. Troy was hardly alone in experiencing turmoil. Neighboring states, including the Mycenaean palaces in Greece and the Hittite Empire in Anatolia, also show signs of upheaval in the same period. Scholars still wonder whether the destruction at Troy specifically suggests a Greek-led invasion or simply represents one component in a broader network of unrest. With every shovel of earth and each new lab analysis, we uncover another piece of the puzzle. Yet the more we learn, the more difficult it becomes to distinguish myth from possible reality. Next, we turn our attention to how experts interpret the Iliad itself, searching for ways Homer's verses might align or conflict with the data emerging from this storied site. As we delve deeper into Troy's mysteries, we must confront the text that started it all, Homer's Iliad. How much of this epic poem aligns with the archaeological record, and how much stands as the stuff of legend? Certain details within the Iliad, such as boars' tusk helmets and the types of swords or spears described, appear consistent with Bronze Age artifacts found at Mycenaean sites in Greece. References to chariots often portray them as swift vehicles for heroics rather than large-scale cavalry forces, a depiction that some scholars see as reflecting the warfare style of the late Bronze Age. Yet the poem's near-invincible heroes, Achilles, Hector, Ajax, may be poetic exaggerations that still interweave genuine Bronze Age warfare into their legendary exploits. Homer also places gods like Athena, Apollo, and Aphrodite at the very heart of battle, directly influencing its outcome. This supernatural element highlights the moral and cultural values of the era, although if one strips away the divine interventions, the tactical maneuvers and hero versus hero duels could mirror historical combat scenarios. In this way, Homer's tapestry becomes equal parts poetic flourish and potential historical reference, suggesting glimpses of Bronze Age armor and strategy while instilling the drama and awe unique to epic poetry. To pin down whether the Trojan War took place at all, we must consider when and where these battles supposedly occurred. Most who argue for a historical basis date the war to roughly 1250 to 1180 BCE, coinciding with the peak of Mycenaean civilization in Greece and the final years of the Hittite Empire in Anatolia. These two powers might both have had interests in the region. Homer describes Troy as positioned near the Hellespont, the modern Dardanelles, controlling critical maritime trade routes, and excavations at Hisarlik confirm a vantage point overlooking corridors to the Aegean and Black Sea. Topographical studies show that the wide plain near Hisarlik could indeed accommodate large armies, matching Homer's references to extensive Greek encampments. Nearby rivers, known in the Iliad as Scamander and Simwa, do indeed flow close to the archaeological site. Such geographic clues line up strikingly well with the poem, yet the challenge remains to pinpoint the exact era of conflict, since multiple destruction layers at Troy could match a broad timescale. With textual hints suggesting a war in the late Bronze Age and modern excavations revealing signs of possible siege or devastation, the debate now intensifies. Is it truly the Trojan War, or merely one of many conflicts folded into legend? Some historians believe there is enough evidence to claim a real event took place at Troy around the period Homer describes. Others argue that the poem compresses and embellishes many smaller skirmishes into one grand narrative, shaped by centuries of oral storytelling. Regardless of the precise truth, the Iliad's themes of love, divine intervention, and heroism amplify any historical kernel, forging a unified tale that resonates to this day. Even if the war Homer describes never happened exactly as he tells it, the epic may still capture cultural memories of real battles, passed down through generations and woven into a tapestry of legend. In the end, this poem, rich with deities and extraordinary heroes, provides glimpses of a Bronze Age reality, yet fact and fiction remain tightly intertwined. Next, we look beyond the battlefield itself to see how the Iliad and the possibility of a real Troy influenced the cultural fabric of the ancient world, leaving a legacy that endures well into our own time. When we consider the longevity of the Iliad, it's tempting to ask why a poet like Homer would embellish or even fabricate elements of the story. Could it be for the sake of drama, moral lessons, or simply entertainment? Storytellers often magnify real events to captivate their audiences, adding larger-than-life heroes, divine interventions, and tragic twists that transform ordinary conflicts into cultural cornerstones. Epic poets also incorporated moral and ethical lessons, honor, bravery, loyalty, intended to guide listeners in their own lives. Before writing became widespread, bards recited these tales from memory, weaving in local anecdotes and cultural details. Over time, the lines between fact and fiction grew blurred, giving rise to the richly layered tapestry we now call the Iliad. In a world where poems were passed down through generations of singer poets, details evolved and heroes changed, allowing events from different eras to converge into a single grand drama. Supernatural elements and extraordinary feats were woven into the narrative, making the epic both memorable and meaningful for diverse Greek communities. In essence, Homer was not so much inventing as amplifying the echo of real events, infusing them with themes that speak to the core of human nature. For millennia, the name Troy has conjured images of longing and loss, bravery and betrayal. From ancient Greek festivals to modern pop culture, the story of Troy continues to captivate hearts and minds. Why does this ancient war still hold such power? The valor of Achilles, the loyalty of Patroclus, and the cunning of Odysseus illustrate universal virtues and vices, echoing across generations. The Trojan horse stands as an enduring symbol of deception and strategic brilliance, a reminder that cunning can outdo sheer force. Meanwhile, Paris and Helen's story, whether it be a grand romance or a tragic betrayal, demonstrates love's potential to spark momentous consequences. Homer's pantheon offers a window into humanity's perpetual struggle with fate, as Achilles grapples with the knowledge of his own mortality. From Virgil's Aeneid to Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida, each era has reimagined Troy in its own image, projecting its anxieties, hopes, and moral codes onto the ancient tale. Modern adaptations, including films, novels, and video games, attest to the legend's broad appeal and timeless relevance. In all these forms, the tapestry of Troy's tale, woven from threads of war, love, destiny, and pride, becomes a mirror, reflecting our darkest failings and our noblest virtues. Whether the city's destruction was real or partially imagined, Troy's ruin and the heroics that led to it continue to enchant and caution us alike. In the end, we may never fully disentangle the threads of myth and history behind Troy. Yet through excavation, research, and a willingness to question assumptions, we continue to peel back the layers of time, discovering that sometimes the greatest stories are more real than we ever dared to imagine. Whether Troy fell beneath the spears of Greek warriors or simply to the forces of nature and shifting empires, its echoes still resonate in our collective consciousness. Generations have dreamed of Achilles' wrath, marveled at the cunning behind the Trojan horse, and pondered the tragic love that ignited it all. Today, from towering museum displays to a lone shard of pottery pulled from the dusty earth, Troy's mystique endures. As scholars scrutinize each new artifact, they weave an ever-evolving tapestry of fact and fable, inviting us to join in the search for truth. But perhaps the real wonder lies not in proving every detail correct, but in embracing the power of stories to unite and inspire us. Through the tale of Troy, we glimpse the best and worst of humanity, heroism and hubris, loyalty and loss, ingenuity and destruction. In that sense, Troy's legacy transcends mere bricks and mortar. It lives on in our timeless pursuit of knowledge, beauty, and meaning.